Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy Podcast.
Hello, Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Roy Evans, strong leg, end over end. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep to the end zone. Up the middle, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45, 40. Holy moly! 40, 50, 10, 5, touchdown. Like last year, the same.
And the winner is...
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the official Heisman Trophy Podcast. As the man said, I'm your host, Chris Houston, and we've got a great show for you today. One of the hottest players in the country, Jalen Milroe, quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide, will kick things off just a little bit later. And for you old-timers, we've got a great interview with BYU Heisman Trophy winner from 1990, Ty Detmer. Just a reminder, Heisman ballots will go out on November 27th. They must be returned a week later by December 4th. Later in the evening on December 4th, the Heisman Trust will announce live on ESPN the 4 finalists for the 2023 Heisman Trophy ceremony. And that will kick off one of the great traditions in college football. We're talking Heisman Week. And then on December 9th at 8 p.m. on ESPN, we will announce the winner of the 2023 Heisman Trophy. It's been a fascinating Heisman race so far. No one seems to really be running away with it. And the way things are headed, this could be one of the closest votes in the Heisman's history. There's still a lot of football to be played, and there's still a lot of ways that things could shake out. And it's all going to come down to the mood of this year's Heisman electorate, what they look for in a player, what they value the most. And in the end, the Heisman Trophy winner will no doubt be the player who best defines the spirit of this season. And of course, the official Heisman Trophy podcast will be there to talk to the Heisman Trophy winner and the Heisman Trophy finalists. And of course, we'll be checking in with a lot of the great Heisman winners who will be coming out to New York City for the ceremony. So if you like shows that have on incredible guests, I mean, look at our guest list. We have the best players in the country coming on every week, and also some of the greatest players ever to play football. Just be sure you're here to listen to it. Go to your favorite streaming service, follow us, like us, give us a good review. We would really appreciate that. That all said, it's time to get this podcast rolling, but let's do like we always do and round up the latest in the Heisman world.
It's the Heisman Roundup.
Week 11.
Can you believe it? In less than 4 weeks, we'll have a new Heisman Trophy winner, and the leading candidates are not looking to make it easy on voters, who will turn in their ballots in less than 3 weeks. Let's dig into another week of top performances, starting with LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels, who had one of the all-time great games in the Tigers' 52-35 win over Florida to improve to 7-3 on the season. Daniels, who leads the country with 30 touchdown passes as well as in quarterback rating, became the first quarterback in FBS history to have at least 350 yards passing and 200 yards rushing in the same game. He generated 606 total yards while accounting for 5 touchdowns. He passed for 372 yards and 3 touchdowns and ran for 234 yards on just 12 carries, scoring twice more. Not surprisingly, LSU coach Brian Kelly gave Daniels a ringing Heisman endorsement after the game.
He's a phenomenal athlete. He's the best quarterback in the country. He's the best playmaker in the country. He's the best player. Now, I've watched them all. He is the best player. You can say whatever you want. Well, we're 7-3, and whoever else is undefeated. That doesn't mean anything. What matters is who's the best player. He's the best player.
Oregon quarterback Bo Nix kept pace with the nation's top signal callers, orchestrating a 36-27 victory over USC on Saturday night. Nix, who leads the country in completion percentage, passed for 412 yards and 4 touchdowns, giving him 29 passing scores on the year, just 1 off the national lead. He also has 5 rushing touchdowns. This 21-yard third-quarter touchdown pass to Tez Johnson was his final of the night and gave Oregon a 2-score cushion.
From the 21. Oh, look at that pirouette by Nix. Alone in the end zone, touchdown. Right to Tez. Well, it was their drive, wasn't it? It was brother to brother.
Michael Penix Jr. has led Washington to just its second 10-0 start ever after a 35-28 win over Utah. Penix, the nation's leader in passing yards, rolled up another 332 yards through the air with 2 scores, while also rushing for a touchdown as he rallied the Huskies in the second half. He hit wide receiver Roma Dunze from 33 yards out for the go-ahead score with 4:09 to go.
Cannon shot down the middle. It's a touchdown!
Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. kept his production at a high level, scoring 3 times in the Buckeyes' 38-3 victory over Michigan State. He caught 7 passes for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving him 12 for the season, which is 1 off of the national lead. He also notched his 7th game with over 100 receiving yards. He also registered his first career rushing score in the first quarter on a 19-yard scamper.
Take it to Henderson, pitch it, Harrison, open space, there he goes, Marvin Harrison Jr., touchdown, Ohio State. Get it to the playmaker, and he'll make a play.
Alabama, no stranger to Heisman candidates in the last decade plus, may be seeing a surge of attention in quarterback Jalen Milroe, who has the Crimson Tide at 9-1. The sophomore accounted for a career-high 6 touchdowns in Alabama's 49-21 win over Kentucky, 3 passing and 3 rushing. That gives him 7 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, by the way, and 12 for the year. He passed for 234 yards and ran for another 36. This 26-yard pass to Roydell Williams was his 3rd of the day.
And now trying to direct traffic and gets it complete to Williams, and Williams is able to turn the corner and score it for Alabama. Jalen Milroe extending the play and finding Roydell Williams for a 27-yard touchdown.
Finally, a nod to Oklahoma quarterback Dylan Gabriel, who turned in a monster performance in the Sooners' 59-20 win over West Virginia. The senior threw for 423 yards and 5 passing touchdowns, and also rushed for 3 more scores. The 8 touchdowns accounted for the most in program history in a single game. The record he broke? That belonged to a pair of Oklahoma Heisman winners shared by Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Hey college football fans, tickets to the 2023 Heisman Trophy Dinner Gala are now on sale. The event takes place in New York City on Sunday, December 10th, the day after the Heisman Trophy ceremony. The guest of honor for the gala is the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner, as well as the 50th anniversary winner John Cappelletti, the 25th anniversary winner Ricky Williams, and the 10th anniversary winner Jameis Winston. Plus, we'll also be honoring the 2023 Heisman Humanitarian Award winner. Just go to Heisman.com to purchase tickets and witness Heisman history. Our first guest on this week's Heisman Trophy podcast is Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. For those of you who follow the Tide, it's been very fascinating to watch his development through the year. He's had a few rough patches early in the season, but he's come on strong, and especially in the last few weeks. He's simply put one of the best players in the country, which is why he is on the official Heisman Trophy podcast. We only have the best players in the country on this show. Through 9 games, Milroe has 2,070 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a passer rating of 173.6. He's also rushed for 333 yards and added 12 scores on the ground. More importantly, it seems like he's developed into the leader on this football team. Like his head coach, Nick Saban, he is all business, and it seems like he and his team are peaking at just the right time. So, Jalen Milroe, thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
I appreciate you having me on.
Jalen, you and the entire Alabama team are surging at just the right time. You've been on fire lately with 10 combined touchdowns the last couple of games, and you're really throwing the ball well, too. How have you and your team been able to put it all together as we head into the final stretch of the season?
Yes, sir. We see everything as a process, and I think with the process, we have to see some things in some areas that we need to improve on. And I think everything is a group effort as a collective whole. And I think the coaching staff has done a great job with challenging us to be an even greater offense. We're not a finished product. But we're constantly growing, and we see that, and we have a special group in the locker room because they're willing to work hard and they're willing to improve and acknowledge, we're not a finished product. I think that's the biggest thing that's allowing us to grow as an offense and make my job even easier, And so yeah. I think it's important for our guys just to know that, we have a lot of improvements to make, but we're also making great strides.
You guys got off to a bit of a slow start with the loss to Texas, and then you didn't play against South Florida. That must have been a pretty tough ordeal to go through. How did you overcome that mentally, and who gave you the best advice during that time?
Yeah, I saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as the opportunity to grow, and also seeing football in a different lenses. Being able to, see football from the sideline, and then also enhancing my leadership qualities and leadership skills during that moment. Tough time don't last, and the biggest thing you have to do through tough time is learn from it. And so I took it as a time to learn as much as possible, and then to talk about our football team. We've grown so much from the Texas game, and it was a learning moment for us. We found some things that we needed to improve on. We found what are some things we need to turn into a strength as far as our weaknesses. So I think as we get to this point in the season, we've seen a lot of different outcomes, and we're just steadily learning and growing.
Now, was this around the time where you came up with the idea, maybe with you and Terrion Arnold, I hear the Let All Naysayers Know t-shirts, Lank? Tell me about that.
Yeah, Lank was actually something throughout the offseason that was, harped on, throughout the offseason. It was really just it was something for us to build off of, especially the season we had last year was not to the standard that we want to play at. And with that, it came with a lot of doubts following this year. And through the offseason, the biggest thing that we wanted to incorporate to the guys is that forget about the naysayers who say we can't do something, who say we can't achieve this, or we shouldn't be worrying about external factors that we can't control. So it's all about just letting the naysayers know with our performance, with our work ethic, with our great attitude and how we approach things. So I think it was a great acronym that we brought together as far as LANK, and it's a great motto that we have.
Did you guys make t-shirts? Are you wearing that right now?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, so how did your life change? You were the backup quarterback before this year. Now you're the starting quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Are you more recognized around town than you were before? Do you feel more pressure? Is it how has your life changed overall?
Yeah. Well, I'll say I won't take those days for granted, not playing, because I learned so much football being off the field. Learning under Bryce Young, I learned off from him. I've seen his opportunity to grow as a player on and off the field, and to learn as much as possible from the guy that I was playing. And Bryce did a great job here through his preparation, his leadership qualities, how he approached the game, his mental toughness. It was different things that he incorporated to his game that I can learn and grow from. And so I see football, while being out the field, was a great opportunity to grow as a quarterback. But to speak about my experience as being a quarterback, it's a lot that comes with it. And I think the biggest thing all quarterbacks need to have is being prepared. I think the more prepared you are, the less anxious you are when you approach the field. And so I think you fall back to your level of training. You fall back to your level of training instead of rising to the occasion. And I truly believe that, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I think what allowed me to grow is just really trying to acknowledge what were my strengths, what were my weaknesses throughout the off season, and then also turning all strengths even stronger. So I think it was just a lot of things that go with being successful at the position, and I just had to acknowledge what was in front of me.
Yeah, what were some of those weaknesses that you felt you had coming into the year, and it seems like the light has kind of come on the last few weeks, maybe. Yeah. What is that? Do you feel that's the case, that something has changed, that maybe the game is slowing down for you a bit?
Yeah, I think I lack the experience. I think experience is the best teacher, and that's allowing me to grow. The more reps I have, the more games I've had, I'm seeing things even more, and football is a complex sport. There's a lot of things that come with the game, and I believe that experience is the best teacher, and I think that's how I've grown, and I think that's the best thing that's been for me. So each game that goes by, I'm able to just really pick up what I've learned from each game and try to grow as much as possible.
You had 6 total touchdowns last week against Kentucky. Only you and Bryce Young and Tua Tagovailoa have been able to do that for Alabama. What's it feel like to join such a prestigious group?
Well, those guys, that's definitely a prestigious group with Tua and Bryce Young. I have a lot of work to be done, And I'm constantly trying to grow as much as possible because there's some things in the game that I need to improve on. So I'm not satisfied with that performance. But, with those guys, it's truly an honor to be, recognized with that group.
You came out of Tompkins High in Katy, Texas. Tell me, who or what inspired you to become a quarterback?
Yeah, my dad is who inspired me to be a quarterback. That's my only coach, growing up was my dad. It was me and him. We picked up the ball when I was 4 years old, joined a youth team the following year. And so since then, it was me being coached by my dad all my life. And my dad was a Marine. My mom was in the Navy. So I grew up with structure, discipline, and really chasing after your dreams, no matter how hard it is. And with this position, I've been told I couldn't play the position. I've been told to switch positions. I've been told it's too hard. I've been told that I won't start at the University of Alabama. So it was a lot of things that were placed in front of me, but through those obstacles will allow me to grow through any situation with my parents and my Lord and Savior. So I don't take my journey for granted. I think I'm blessed to be where I'm at, but I do acknowledge that I have some things to improve on.
I heard you had a Vince Young jersey growing up.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Was he one of your idols?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he definitely was. I had a Titan jersey.
Now that you're the starter, what does your preparation for a big game look like? How do you mentally and physically get ready for when the big games are coming up? You got some big ones coming up, Auburn and the SEC title game against Georgia.
Yeah, through preparation, I think before touching the field for any game, you have to put yourself through any situation. And I think that's the biggest preparation key is that to not specifically dive in, but I think that's the biggest thing, whether it's third down, red area, normal downs, really anticipating, but also reacting with what the defense gives, but also through your film preparation, and then also with getting with your offensive coordinator and going through the game plan and seeing the game through his lenses. I think that allows the quarterback to even grow. So that's some things that I go through as far as preparation. And then on the field is an opportunity to take what you learn in the film room and incorporate it to the field. So I think there's many things that goes on to being prepared in the game and to allow you to grow and allow you to play successfully.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, what are some goals you've set for yourself, both in your football career and outside of it?
Yeah, my ultimate goal is to be financially stable. That's my number one goal, to be financially stable and provide for my family and my own one day. My parents have done a good job raising me and bring me up this far. But now that I'm at this point, I want to, just be stable, be able to be on my own 2 feet. But as far as football wise, the number one thing is go want to know each and every week. And no matter where that takes me, all I know that if I gave it all, I'm satisfied with that. So, and with that, there's a lot of accolades that come with it. There's a lot of long-term goals that you set as a football team before the season. And if you're able to achieve that, that's great. But the number one thing is just giving it your all. And then little things throughout the season come as you put the work in, as you grind, as you do more and more throughout the season, and as cliche as it sounds, it's all about doing your job and going want to know each and every week. And that's number one I have to do this week is attacking Chattanooga, being the best quarterback I can be, lead properly, prepare properly. So there's a lot of things that's set in stone throughout the season. And so that's number one that I have to do.
What do you like to do when you're not playing football, when you're not preparing for games, and when you're just on your own doing your thing? What's your passions and what are your interests?
All I know is football. I'm being real. Yeah, all I know is football. I don't really have too many hobbies. It's just football, family. That's about it. I come to the facility early in the morning. I leave out, go home, go to sleep, do it again the next day.
Did you have any favorite Heisman winners growing up, or follow any of the old Heisman races when you were watching football growing up?
Not necessarily. I just been so grounded in what I was doing and trying to be where I'm at today. That's honestly what it came down to. But with that, I just acknowledge hard work, and I know that my ultimate goal, was potentially get into a conversation, anything like that sort, because that's everyone's goal, of, going to college, playing at a high level, and, receiving rewards and stuff like that. So just growing up, seeing different guys win the award, it's truly an honor because I grew up watching the ceremony and hearing their speeches and their, their heart in their stories and stuff like that. So, so I've always, acknowledged a great story.
Well, if you keep going like you're going, you might be in New York City sooner or later. Finally, what advice would you give to young athletes who aspire to play at the collegiate level or who want to play for Alabama? What would you tell young guys coming up who are playing quarterback?
Don't dim your light for anybody's inability to see your worth. Chase your dreams. Don't let anyone turn them down. Set short-term goals and long-term goals for yourself and ensure that it's achievable and reachable. Set goals that are available to you and put yourself around the right people and surround yourself with the proper resources to allow you to grow.
Jalen Milroe, University of Alabama, starting quarterback. Thank you for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast. We appreciate you taking the time. We wish you the best of luck to your team and good health going forward.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. Roll Tide.
All right. Thank you.
This is Mike Krzyzewski, and you're listening to the official Heisman Trophy Podcast.
Take an even deeper dive into Heisman lore by going to Heisman.com, home to all things Heisman, including news, bios, and the latest on all the winners, plus updates on the Heisman Trophy Trust and its charitable mission. It's the A to Z for everything Heisman, from Alan Amici to Danny Werfel. We really need a Heisman winner whose name begins with Z.
In college football's modern era, once you set aside the independents like Notre Dame and Miami, there's only one player who's won the Heisman Trophy for a team that did not play in what we would now call a power conference. And that player was BYU quarterback Ty Detmer. I was looking at highlights from his Heisman winning season, especially the game against Miami, where BYU beat the Hurricanes 28-21 in a season opener. And Detmer was just this unflappable player who just made play after play, and he could extend plays with his feet, and he just had eyes in the back of his head. He knew where the rush was coming from. And the ball didn't always look pretty coming off his hand, but wow, it just landed exactly where it needed to be. Detmer was the manifestation of this great BYU offensive system, one that produced great quarterbacks like Gifford Nielsen and Jim McMahon and Steve Young, Robbie Bosco, who won a national title in 1984. So with all those guys, Detmer was the greatest of them all. In his Heisman winning season, he threw for 5,188 yards, 41 touchdowns. And by the time he left BYU, he had broken 59 NCAA records and tied 3 others, including a then record 15,031 career passing yards. So let's meet him. Okay, Ty Detmer, thanks for coming on the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You had one of the great careers for a quarterback in college football history. While at BYU, you won the Heisman Trophy in 1990. And of course, you're a Cougars legend to this day. But you were born and raised in Texas, born in San Marcos, which is like halfway between San Antonio and Austin. What was it like growing up in the Lone Star State in the 1970s and 80s?
Well, it was great. My dad was a football coach, so just grew up around athletics. He started out as, obviously an assistant and coached baseball, basketball, football, a little bit of everything. And then as I got older, he became a head football coach, and I got to kind of tag along and be the ball boy and do all those fun things as a kid.
You apparently just loved to play sports. When you were younger, you earned letters in golf, football, basketball, baseball, and track while in high school. That's really amazing. I don't know how you had time to do all that. Was that just a natural thing for you to do, just to be involved in sports, especially with your dad being a coach?
It was, grew up playing at the local YMCA pretty much, just every season. Look forward to, when football ended, look forward to basketball and then baseball and, just messed around in golf, Dad. But, we're fortunate to have a great group of friends that were all involved in those things, and Dad's coached and, just kind of grew up around it. And that's kind of what you did as a kid.
Nice. Did you ever hit a hole-in-one in golf?
I never have. I've played a lot of golf and never had a hole-in-one. So
I'm surprised by that, actually. Anyway, you were especially good in football, basketball, and baseball. But what made you decide in the end to concentrate on football?
Well, I think growing up in Texas, that was kind of the focal point, especially at that time. And like I said, my dad being a football coach, just for me, as I started playing flag football in first grade and moved on to tackle in fourth, and just probably wasn't fast enough to be the running back or the receiver. So quarterback kind of became the natural position for me and threw it pretty well. So something just, having the ball in your hands every play and having an opportunity to make a difference always, just appealed to me.
Were you physically an early bloomer, or did you kind of develop most of your physical skills later?
No, I was a late bloomer. I actually repeated the 7th grade and still, graduated high school 6 foot, 168 pounds, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I ever really bloomed. So it was, the natural position was either going to be kicker or quarterback, where you didn't have to try to run somebody over.
So by your senior year, you were a prep All-American as a quarterback. Walk me through the recruiting process and all the schools that were looking at you and what you were thinking and how you ended up picking BYU.
Well, back then, obviously, it was different without an internet and all of those things. So, I think schools recruited off of newspaper clippings and just some of the magazines that came out. Dave Campbell magazine that came out every year and kind of listed top players in the state of Texas. And
yeah, Texas football, right? Wasn't that the yearly yearbook that he did?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I started my junior year. We had a really big year throwing the football. I think broke the state record for single season passing yardage and kind of put you on the map, and started getting letters from a lot of different schools. Back then it was mail and questionnaires, and so you'd fill those out and send them back. And so it was kind of a lot different. And I started noticing BYU, and they were a school that threw the ball, and we threw it quite a bit in high school for those times, and just didn't know much about BYU or even where it was, but I knew they threw the ball and had a great list of quarterbacks that went on to play in the NFL, and so that kind of became kind of the target school, and we took a trip up there summer after my junior year and really fell in love with the place and committed to Lavelle Edwards on that trip, and senior year kind of played it out. Was looking forward to getting up there.
What were some of the other schools that you might have considered for a minute?
Well, at the time, UCLA, Arizona State were throwing the football. Michigan came down, watched a basketball game. Miami reached out, and I talked to them on the phone a few times. And so really more of some of the passing schools at that time that were throwing it a little bit were more interesting for me.
Yeah. You missed a chance to hand off the ball a lot if you had gone to Michigan.
I know. Yeah, that was never really, a school that I targeted. It was, an honor, obviously, to get a letter from them being
sure.
But, I was not real excited about their offense at the time.
What was it like meeting and later playing for Lavelle Edwards and some of the other great coaches on that staff for BYU, including Roger French, who I hear was a real character, and Norm Chow?
Yeah, it was, one of the appealing things was that knowing the consistency within the program, you knew that Lavelle was going to be there. You didn't have to worry about him, going to a different job or moving on to the NFL. You knew that he was going to be the guy in charge, and that was where he wanted to be, for the rest of his career. And so then you look at the coaches on staff had all been there a long time, and you felt like it was a very stable program, and things weren't going to change once you got there. So, with Norm Chow running the offense, like you said, Roger French was the offensive line coach and a real character, and just did an awesome job with those linemen up front. But Norm was the guy calling the plays, and I had a great relationship with him and appreciated his mentorship there.
Now, I knew Norm a few years back when I was working at USC, and he was the offensive coordinator, and he always had this regal bearing about him. And he was just like a figure off of Mount Rushmore, just this big mountain of a man. What was he like back then when he was at BYU?
Same at BYU. He's kind of, a little bit more business oriented, but could laugh and have a good time. But he was more of the, kind of the business guy, down to business. And for me, he was great. He'd go out and I think the run and shoot was kind of getting big then. And he, brought back some ideas and, ran them by me. If I liked them, we put them in. If I wasn't real comfortable with them, we'd take them out. And so, for me, he was awesome because there was a great line of communication. And if I wasn't comfortable with something, he didn't, force feed it to me. And I thought we worked really well together.
Now, I heard that the BYU offense was actually pretty easy to learn, even though it produced such great results, that it was very intuitive. For instance, the receivers had very easy to learn route trees, which means that they got up to speed really quickly. It seems like a good explanation for why so many quarterbacks and players were able to succeed so well in that system. Do you think that's pretty accurate?
Yeah. Fortunately for me, we ran a similar system in high school where we had two backs and we would get them out on routes and we used our backs quite a bit, which BYU, was kind of famous for. And so for me, I had a really good foundation going in where you'd read, linebacker rotation and hot routes. And so I got to BYU and the terminology was fairly similar as far as formations went. We called red right, blue right, brown right. And then, obviously the terminology in the pass game was a little different, but the concepts were real similar to what I'd been running. So it wasn't real hard for me to go in and be able to learn the concept stuff because that's what I'd done for 3 years in high school.
You redshirted as a freshman, and then you played a lot as a redshirt freshman. Sean Covey was the starter that year, and then you had one start in which you threw for 333 yards and 5 touchdowns. Pretty good. And then you helped lead the Cougars to a win over Colorado in the Freedom Bowl. Now, at that point, you must have felt pretty confident going into the next season, right?
Yeah, Sean was a junior, so, you knew he was coming back. But like you said, I'd played quite a bit that year, filled in for him. The one game he was injured, but, there were times where the offense was struggling a little, and Lavelle would put me in the second half. And that Colorado game was one where we kind of came back and won and was named the Freedom Bowl MVP. So that really kind of – going into the spring gave me an opportunity, and then Sean had knee surgery in the off season, so he was out for spring ball. So that really kind of opened the door for me to get all the reps and to kind of just move in as that number one QB going into the sophomore season.
Yeah, you had a huge sophomore season and led the Cougars to the WAC title. You had over 4,500 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, which in those days, these were almost unheard of numbers. What kind of goals did you set for yourself heading into the 1990 season, your junior year? Did you have any thoughts about the Heisman?
It was talked about because the year before we played Penn State in a bowl game, and I think I threw for 570 yards or something like that. And so that kind of put us on the map because at the time nobody was doing that to Penn State,
Yeah.
And so it kind of puts you at the forefront, being mentioned in the Heisman race, and then knowing really wasn't a big personal goal setter as far as like stats and things like that. It's like we want to win games, and we had Miami on the schedule, our second game, their first game, and obviously all off season you're kind of pointing to that game, and that was like the big game at the time. There was no ESPN2. It was It was on ESPN, the big game of the week that night, and we were able to win that game and had a big night. So it really threw you to the forefront of the Heisman Trophy conversation.
Yeah, it seemed like with BYU, with that great system, there was a great quarterback every year. It started with Gifford Nielsen and then Jim McMahon and Steve Young and Robbie Bosco. And I think for a lot of people who are on the outside looking in at the time, they saw you and thought, oh, you're just another product of that system, right? It was almost expected that you'd be putting up these great numbers. But by beating Penn State and then Miami, it seems like people started to see that you were a quarterback who kind of transcended the system. And I think that really went a long way to helping you win the Heisman.
It did at the time. We're in the WAC conference, so, you always heard strength of schedule and some of those things. And, playing a Penn State and then a Miami, it just gave credibility to the fact we were playing good football. And so, some of the other guys were McMahon and Young and Bosco didn't have maybe some of those powers on the schedule. People always question, well, they're doing it against, New Mexico or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And, we played some of those teams, but it also, when you're able to play number 1 ranked Miami and you knock them off and throw for 400 yards, it kind of opens people's eyes that, oh, well, they are playing some good football no matter who they're playing against.
Absolutely. Now, that opener versus Miami in 1990, did you guys have that circled on your calendar long before that? Were you working towards that? Was it one of those things where you guys were pulling out all the stops, from a game plan standpoint?
Yeah, I think we had played them in my sophomore. Actually, it was my freshman year, redshirt freshman year. We played them in the Orange Bowl, and they got after us pretty good down there. And I learned a ton. I got to play most of the second half that game, and learned a ton. Playing against them, just speed and what you can and can't get away with. Hanging the football out there. So that was big for us going into 1990 because a few of us had an opportunity to play against them or at least seen them, and we had a pretty veteran team. So yeah, they were definitely circled on the calendar, and it was one of those games where we were really excited about. So.
Yeah, and obviously looking up and down Miami's roster at the time and seeing all those guys with amazing athleticism and a lot of NFL careers in their futures. What did you guys do to try to neutralize that? And what was your specific game plan? If you thought, hey, if we can do this, then we've got a good shot.
Yeah, number one was just we tried to get the ball out quick. In my mind, just knowing them from a couple years before, it's like you can't sit back there and take a 7-step drop and hold it. So. Quick game really kind of, came into play that game. And in my mind, it was you got to get the ball out quick, force their corners to play the flats and some of those things. And then once they start coming up, then you can maybe get them a little tired and slow their rush down a little, and then be able to hit some balls in behind the corners because they were primarily just a cover 2 team.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to do that, and our defense really played great. I think, I saw some clips a year ago and didn't realize we had 5 turnovers. We had like 4 fumbles and an interception that, really our defense stepped up and played really well that game. And they were probably the biggest difference because, they were able to get stops and get us the ball back.
Yeah, that was definitely an amazing game. I remember you just throwing some balls that had eyes and seemed to land through arms and into hip pockets. As an observer, it just seemed like a magical night. From your perspective, what did it feel like to pull that game off? People forget how important the early games of a season can be in a Heisman race. So much of the focus is on these late season games. But when you won that game against Miami, you pretty much set the tone for the entire season. That game arguably won you the Heisman.
Yeah, and like I said, that was kind of threw you right at the top of the race because they were mentioning Craig Erickson, who was the quarterback at Miami too. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a head-to-head type of battle, and we came out on top. And so all of a sudden, you're kind of thrown to the front of things. So obviously that was a huge win for the program, and they were ranked number 1. So it was one of those games. I think we were ranked 16 or 17, and so we were up in there, but we weren't. Miami was the Georgia of college football at the time, nowadays. So that was one of those games where it was just like, man, if we could beat those guys, this would be huge for everybody involved. And it happened. And so you kind of take a big sigh of relief because that was one that, if you're going to put yourself on the map, that was the game.
And that certainly must have been, just an incredible feeling around town. I guess some students put the big T next to the Y on the hill before the game. You probably never had to pay for a meal again in that town, I would imagine, in Provo.
Well, you're still at BYU. People were kind of cheap, so it was against the rules too. So there was no NIL deal.
You know what I mean, though. Yeah, it's just
yeah. But no, it was obviously I mean, the whole state was looking forward to that game, I think, because the stands were full. Generally, crowd was coming in, still walking in midway through the first quarter, at some of the other games.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, it was a night game. It was just, a ton of electricity in the stadium when you got there, and then you're out for pregame, and there was just a buzz around the whole evening.
Yeah.
And it, it's one of those games you hope you get a chance to play in when you go play in college.
Absolutely. Just a classic. You, of course, went on to throw for 5,188 yards that season. You broke 42 NCAA records. Was there a point in the year where you thought, I think I might win the Heisman?
Not really. I mean, Rocket Ismail was having a big year. Eric Bieniemy was at Colorado doing great things. Sean Moore and David Klingler were having big seasons. So it was kind of, but I think Rocket was the one where you're like, man, he's at Notre Dame. They're on TV every week. He's kick returning. He's making some big plays. And really, really never thought like, oh, man, this is going to happen until we had to play Hawaii the day of the announcement. And when we got out there on Thursday and Friday morning, USA Today would come out with their weekend edition paper, and they kind of did a straw poll, I guess, and had me as the winner. And that was probably the first time I really thought, man, this actually could happen, So all season, you don't ever kind of relax or let yourself. You try not to think about it, but obviously you're hearing about it, but you try not to think, man, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
That day of,
Now, you were actually in Hawaii when the Heisman Trophy winner was announced that year, right?
We had to play that night, and so we had a big, kind of deal up in the lobby of the hotel. So,
and then after the game, I imagine you went right out to New York.
It actually the dinner and everything was like a week later. So
okay,
we lost that night, but it was not a great game. I think we got a little excited after the announcement, went out late. So you had a few days to kind of prepare to go to New York and get out there and enjoy the festivities for the Heisman.
Tell me about that trip to New York City. Was that your first time there, and were there any Heisman winners that you were excited to meet?
Oh, yeah. That was my first time to New York. My parents got to fly in from Texas. It was a pretty neat weekend because, growing up, just a fan of football. I mean, I watched Earl Campbell win his Heisman and saw him play at UT one game. And, then I was a huge Cowboy fan. So Roger Staubach and Tony Dorsett, and just, you get out there and it's like, man, these are my heroes. I'm rubbing shoulders with these guys. Pretty cool. And I know, for my dad, it was a fun weekend because, there were some of the older guys were guys he grew up watching, and it was really a special weekend for our family.
What do you remember the most about that weekend?
Probably they have a dinner for the winners only the night before, before they actually have the banquet and black tie and all those things and hand you the trophy, So being there and it was still at the old downtown athletic club, and I think it was the Heisman room, and it had all the pictures surrounding the walls, and it had like a dinner dance type of deal. And it was really a pretty intimate group because it was mainly for just the winners at that time. You didn't have all the sponsorship and everything like they do now. So it was pretty cool just to see guys interacting and laughing and cutting up and having a good time, and to be a part of that and be included in that was awesome. So that was probably my favorite memory of that weekend.
Yeah, those dinners have taken on a legendary status in the Heisman world for sure. You were one of the rare players to come back to college after winning the Heisman. Was the chances of a second Heisman something that factored into that decision?
No, not at all. I was living the dream in college. If you're having a good time playing, I got married that summer, and just I knew, as far as playing in the NFL, there were obviously question marks with size and arm strength and all those things that I'd heard coming out of high school as well. So there wasn't the enticement where you're going to go be the number one pick and sign for $20 million or anything like that. So for me, it was, I was really looking forward to a senior year and finishing what we'd started with that, my buddies that we'd all come in together as freshmen. And so it never really, I never really entertained leaving after my junior year, and it had nothing to do with trying to win another Heisman. I knew we'd be a younger team, a little bit. We wouldn't be as good as we were that year, but I just was, I loved everything about being at BYU at the time.
It's kind of funny. I think in this era of college football, your skill set might be more attractive to the NFL, right?
Yeah, you're seeing more of the RPO and the smaller quarterbacks are actually out there making plays and I still wasn't a runner, but I feel like skill set with the RPO game and understanding the game, would fit right in nowadays. And guys are proving you don't have to be 6'4" to be successful doing it.
What do you think of the state of college football now with conference realignment and now BYU going to the Big 12?
It's tough. I mean, just the whole NIL and transfer portal. I coach high school football here in Arizona, and I see some of our kids really not getting much of an opportunity to be recruited because even the smaller schools are hitting the transfer portal and things like that. And it's tough. It's tough to. I think, if you're one of the older guys, it's like, oh, you don't want to see it change, but it's the nature of the beast, right? There's more and more money involved. And as a player, you would love to have opportunities to put some money in your pocket and also go if you needed to change schools and find a better situation. It's good for the players. I don't think it's great for the game. I think it's hard. We were just having this conversation yesterday that you see some of these quarterbacks that have played really well, like Hartman. I think it's Hartman played at Wake Forest, just the guy there. And then you go to Notre Dame and you got to learn a new offense. You got to get to know the players. You got, all the little things that you settled in at Wake Forest and kind of grown into now change. And it's hard to see guys go. It's hard as a quarterback to go from offense to offense and try to be successful maybe as you were somewhere else. And so it's not great for the game, but it's good for the players. Some schools benefit from it and some, don't because they're losing guys too. So it's harder with conference realignment too. I think it's always going to morph and change until college football is going to become a little bit like, the NFL and have just regions across the country and have one kind of super league and the rest got to kind of fend for themselves.
And BYU at least got into one of those leagues before they got left out. That's for sure. How do you think the Cougars will do in the Big 12?
Well, they're kind of finding out a little bit right now. It's the gauntlet. When you play in a Power 5 conference, you got to be ready to play every week. You got to have depth, and so hopefully, with having the Big 12 patch on your chest, you're able to recruit and get more guys in there that can help you. Be competitive against those teams, and so they started out. Gangbusters and doing pretty well. And then I think they've had some injuries and have kind of put the brakes on here the last few weeks. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But I think overall, BYU's always done a good job of kind of redirecting and morphing into whatever they've been given. So I think going forward, a year or two from now, they'll be up there competing with some of the best in that conference and have a chance to hopefully win the conference championship.
You're currently the head coach at American Leadership Academy in Queen Creek, Arizona. How do you like coaching, and how much of what you learned at BYU and in the NFL do you bring to your coaching style and systems?
Well, I really enjoy coaching. That's the lifestyle I grew up around. I've really loved what my dad, the impact he had on kids, young men, trying to become men. and so that's kind of been a natural fit for me. I feel like is I enjoy that age of kid where the 14-year-old knuckleheads when they come in high school and hopefully leave as young men ready to conquer the world, and whatever that may be. So I really enjoy coaching high school football. You're able to, impact their lives hopefully for the better and help them through some tough times, but also have some good times with them. And so, you take a little bit from everybody, every place you've been, and at the end of the day, you got to be yourself. You can't try to be someone else. So I take a lot from Lavelle. My dad was similar to Lavelle, guys that taught the game. They weren't drill sergeants. They didn't sit out there and yell at you and make you do up downs all day. You did football drills and told you we're doing this because of this, not just do it because I said to do it. And so they really taught you the game. And so I feel like I try to model myself that way and teach kids the game. Here's why. And we're going to have a good time doing it. We're going to work hard. We're going to play and compete, but we're going to have a good time doing it and enjoy being out there.
How much do your kids know about your playing career? You winning the Heisman, having this record-setting career at BYU and going to the NFL?
Yeah, I think, thanks to the internet, they get the good and the bad. I hear more. I threw 7 picks in a game. I do about the Heisman. So I'm like, yeah, it's okay. You can rebound from those games. So, having some of those experiences help kids deal with maybe a bad game themselves. But they'll pull up a clip here or there. These knucklehead freshmen will pull up a picture off the internet that you took back in college, and at the time you thought it was pretty cool, and now you look back like that was pretty dumb. But so they'll drag stuff up every now and then on you.
The internet never forgets.
No.
So besides coaching, what else keeps you occupied these days? What's going on in Ty Detmer's world?
Well, we had 4 daughters, and my oldest has 3 kids now, so I'm a grandpa and love being a grandpa. The grandkids are the best. So we're just, managing that. I've got 3 of them are married, and then one's not. And, my youngest 2 live here close in Arizona, but so, we're still very involved in the family stuff, and then I've got a ranch in South Texas, so I try to get down there and do a little hunting in the off season when football ends, and kind of do all of that stuff. So just kind of balancing football, the ranch, and family, and enjoying all of that stuff.
Well, wonderful. Ty Detmer, BYU Heisman Trophy winner 1990. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story, and thanks for coming on the show, and we wish you best of health going forward, and hopefully we'll see you in New York next time you're out there.
All right. Appreciate it.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the official Heisman Trophy Podcast. Thanks to everyone who helped put the show together. Producer Paul Goldberg, also the University of Alabama Sports Information Department, Josh Maxson, Alex Thompson. Be sure to tune in next week because there will be a unicorn on our show. No, not a real unicorn, but we do have Barry Sanders, the great Barry Sanders, who is not someone who appears on a lot of shows. We're going to reminisce about the old days, and we're also going to talk about some new projects he has coming up. You definitely won't want to miss that one. See you next week.
The official Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, co-produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. Paul Goldberg is the executive producer and editor. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to the Heisman Trophy Trust and its executive director Rob Whalen and associate director Tim Henning. The official Heisman Trophy podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find clips of our show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just go to @Heisman Trophy.